Hi, Ryan. How are you?
Hey guys, I'm doing well. Good to see you today. So thanks for having me on and hope you guys are well and full of coffee.
Yes. Yes, we had
Absolutely.
our dose of caffeine for the day, so we should be able to get this thing right with you. That's for sure. Um, Anyways, if you don't mind sharing with everybody who you are, what you do, and what kind of got you to where you are today.
sure. So I'm an appraiser, been a certified appraiser, serving Sacramento for 17 years now. And yeah, I pull stats and run data, and it's a passion. But it's never just about the numbers. It's about the stories that the numbers represent. And so that's who I am. And on the side, I love woodworking. So I'm not just a numbers nerd.
Love it.
Really?
Love it, love it. And for so that everybody knows, you said that very humbly, Ryan. You are the kind of the guru of appraisals and numbers and everything in the Sacramento area. And a lot of us agents, as well as I know other appraisers and people in the industry, look to you for your advice, your wisdom, and your guidance, especially when things are getting a little uncertain, which is what we are experiencing right now. So
Yeah.
thank you for taking the time to sit down with us. We're really excited to start kind of trudging through everything with you. To start, what is going on in our real estate market? What are you seeing right now?
Well, I don't know if you guys heard, but we're in a pandemic right now. And
What?
I shouldn't even joke like that, but it's really, I think what's happened over the past month is that it's changed our entire lives, and our lives are on hold. And so it's really no surprise to see real estate in doing, I think in a major hold. But we're seeing 40% less new listings hit the market. We're seeing 40% less sales volume, 40% less pendings. And so we have a market that is still moving in some regards, but it's just a fundamentally different market than a month ago. And so we always talk about how real estate markets change all the time. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down, but there's always new factors in the market, all the time. But I think that we're not always in touch with that. And so when change happens, change on steroids, though, it's right in our face, and we go, oh, wow, the market has changed dramatically in a very, very short period of time, where I think buyers and sellers, some are, standoffish, some are engaging. There's just a lot of uncertainty right now in life and regarding the future. And I think when it comes to markets, whether the stock market or real estate, so they don't respond well to uncertainty sometimes. And so we're sort of in the midst of this, market of change.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with all this change that's going on within our market, are there certain indicators that you like to look towards to see what's going on within our market?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no one end all metric. I think people are constantly searching for that. Okay, show me this one thing that will tell me everything I need to know about the market. Or they'll say, create this one visual to just capture everything. And I so far haven't found that one thing, but I think what we see in the current market is true regardless of what the market's doing. We see the market best in what's happening in the listings and the pendings. Okay. And so the sales in the past are like historical artifacts. They tell us what the market used to be like. All right. So sales in March, they really tell us what the market was like in January and February. All these properties get into contract and they close in March. And so sales in March, they look really hot and the stats are sexy, but we have to back off and go, what is the current market like? We see that in what's getting into contracts and, how many properties are moving right now. What's the sentiment among buyers and sellers? What's the word on the street? What are people thinking? And, because I think in some regards, what people think, that'll show up in their behavior. And so I'm sort of watching, a bunch of different things, but I'd say for anyone who's a real estate hobbyist or professional, I'd say focus heavily on the listings and the pendings, because more than anything, that's going to tell the story of the market best.
Right. And you kind of answered my next question. So I want to just get a little more pointed with it. But do you think right now the facts are impacting our market greater, or is it the buyer and seller perception that's impacting our market greater?
It's so hard because real estate isn't just about the facts of the market. There's the emotions of the market. And I think when we try to divorce the two, it just feels obtuse. And so I think people, for instance, they look at a market on paper and think, here is the ideal time to buy or not buy. But it's about so much more than that, because it's about lifestyle and it's about, needing to move in certain cases. And so it's not just these facts on paper that drive a market. There's so much more. And so I would say, if anything right now, the facts are revealing the market that everyone knows is happening. And so new facts come out. And, this week I published some data and showed that the second week of April, that volume was down between 30 and 40%. And so in some senses, I think the facts show us what we know is happening already, that, yeah, there's less sales happening. And so I would say that it's both, though. But I would say that one thing to be careful of is emotions and reading a headline somewhere and then imposing that headline on the market. And so the temptation is that we see this dreary headline, and maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, but then all of a sudden we say, here it is, this is what's happening on the market. And then we don't get objective about the market. So it's like we're not seeing the market for what it is. We're just letting that headline from the LA Times or the Chronicle or the Bee or whoever sort of dictate our perception rather than the data. So
right, it's like drunk goggles, but real estate version.
Yeah, there you go. I may have to use that. I like that.
Well, with all that being said, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but do you have any type of predictions for what might be in store for our market? And I guess, how do you think buyer behavior will change as this coronavirus kind of dissipates and we overcome it?
Yeah, it's hard because my crystal ball definitely has duct tape all over it. It broke a long time ago, and I get asked this question on a daily basis, and I feel like my answer is somewhat of a letdown because I really don't know the future. I wish I was this oracle, and I'd be really rich, but the reality is that there's so many layers to the market right now. There's uncertainty, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen with lenders, how they're going to respond. We don't know exactly how, I believe was it 1.5 million people in California who have filed for unemployment. How is that going to be expressed locally? And then what would that do to the housing market? And so we have these really big things happening, but it's like the trend is beginning, but we don't see it in the stats yet. And so, I just say that one safe bet would be, throughout this pandemic, however long it lasts, I think the market's poised to be more subdued. All right. And so we can't expect to be roaming around and to have a normal feeling market when life isn't normal. And so my sense is that whenever we do return to normal, I do believe that's going to be a process. It's going to take a while before everyone's comfortable going to Kings games and, out there with everyone. People like, don't touch me, don't touch me. And so we're going to have to adjust to that. But my sense is that as we do get back to normal, that, the market over time will find its new rhythm. But, there's so many moving parts right now that, it's going to be interesting to see how the market evolves in the next few months, what happens to prices, and most of all, I think what happens with volume. Are buyers going to engage in the market at a lesser extent? Is there going to be pent-up demand? I mean, these are questions that we're asking now that we really don't know about the future if we're humble. People have very specific predictions, but they are very specifically wrong about their specific predictions. So I just caution people to say, be objective, see the red flags, but then see where the market goes. So that's sort of my long non-answer, but I think it's an honest one, because that's the best that we can do. So.
Well, we appreciate it. And with all of that being said, and all of this, if you will, craziness that's swirling around, what should buyers and sellers be looking at, doing, thinking, like where should they fall in all of this mess?
Absolutely. So I think buyers and sellers, I would say, be realistic about the market. And that's advice for any market, but sellers need to price for the market that actually exists. And right now we do have a market that is certainly moving. There are, 43% of current pendings have more than one offer. Okay. And so we're seeing some competitiveness. So we were talking before this about under 400. Under 400 right now is more competitive. Okay. But, sellers have to understand that they need to negotiate with buyers, though, throughout the transaction. And so then the seller gets an offer. negotiation doesn't stop as soon as the contract's signed, because if the buyer wants something else, then the seller's going to have to entertain that. Especially if the seller doesn't have 20 people lining up to buy the property. And so I'd say for sellers, be in touch with current dynamics, and for buyers also be in touch with current dynamics. I know I talk with some buyers who say, well, I'm thinking about getting out of contract, and I mean, some buyers are simply going to walk, okay? But for the buyers who are there and sticking, they can't just say, I'm going to offer $300,000 less on this property, and I'm going to get it at a 50% discount. And I think that's the dream. There's a lot of thinking that way, but you've got to offer in the midst of the market that actually exists. And so if the market ended up that way eventually, then your offer would be very consistent, but that's not the type of market we have right now. And so I think buyers need to come to the table, not looking at that headline about the economy crashing or expecting 2007 all over again. We don't know how this market will unfold, but when you're in the midst of it, just be real, okay? Be realistic about what's out there, because unrealistic offers aren't going to get into contracts, okay? Or if you are in contract and all of a sudden say, we really, like there was a Facebook thread the other day where a buyer was in contract and says, we really, at the last minute, we need a 10% reduction off the price. And then the seller's going, what? What are you smoking? What are you talking about? And so my sense is that, if that seller's very desperate, maybe the seller will find a way to negotiate. But I think the buyer was, acting from a place of fear and probably isn't going to be able to get something off of a seller to that magnitude, in the midst of this market, even though buyers have gained more power to negotiate. They aren't holding all the chips to the extent where they can dictate everything they want about price. That's been my perception. I don't know if you guys are seeing that, but they aren't in the driver's seat to the extent where they'll say, yeah, I'll offer you $1 for that. Sellers aren't going to bite at that. So
no, I appreciate you saying all of that, because that is very much concurrent with what Chase and I are seeing. Like we were just talking about prior to the interview here, is our houses that have been going on market, especially the ones under 400, are flying. Multiple offers. We had 9 offers on a property last week that went 15% over its list price. Now, we priced it aggressively because we didn't really know what the market was going to do. And we've been, as agents, testing out different listing strategies and playing with different virtual tours and those types of things. But you are absolutely right. You have serious sellers out there right now. You have more times than not a serious buyer that's coming to the table. And our conversation a lot with our sellers has been, we got to be realistic. And then number 2, we've got to play nice with our buyer that's coming in here. And the conversation with the buyers is, we still need to be aggressive. We still need to be competitive. And we also still need to be realistic in this market, because both of them it takes 2 to tango. And the other thing too, that's been really a thing, like with our sellers, we always talk about financial viability of buyers when we're discussing offers with them. But on top of that, we've really honed in on motive and what is making this buyer tick. We have seen personally, we've gotten some phone calls from clients that were in contract with a iBuyer that fell apart, and they called Chase and I, and they're like, we need help. What do we do now? They canceled our contract because of coronavirus. And so we've had to kind of pick up the pieces and put it back together, so to speak. But with that being said, also, you've got a lot of investors out there right now that are seeing all those headlines and saying, I'm going to capitalize on this and I'm going to get in there. And the investor mentality and motive is sometimes, is all times, very different than the home buyer that wants to live in the property. And so talking about who might be more vested in the close of that transaction has been, like I said, just an interesting way to go through with sellers right now.
Absolutely. So. And I just think that, like, last week there were 354 pendings in the region, and I mean, that's down. It should be 700 plus easily right now, but it just shows that not everyone buys in a market based on the metrics or the facts or the numbers, like what we were talking about before. People are looking at a market going, my lifestyle mandates a move, and so therefore I'm going to move, or I have incentive right now to downsize or upsize or cash out. If I perceive that it's the top of a market, then some sellers would say, I'm going to sell, or I need to move to Texas, or I need to get a house with an accessory unit because my aging parents, we're realizing through this whole coronavirus thing, we need them right where we are, right? or a family's getting, divorced, or like they're, we see all the memes, right now in the market, but like, going on about how, people are going to call it quits after this, after being in quarantine. And I hope that doesn't increase dramatically, but that will be a sliver of people who have incentive to move. And it just shows that people are always moving. And I see that, some people are talking about, has the market gone down to zero, and I think it's an interesting real estate conversation, because that's not what markets do unless there's some sort of, martial law imposed on things. And like, markets are always moving, and the players are always moving. And so that's what makes real estate fascinating. I think there's always something new to watch, and, and we have to, like you guys are doing, I mean, you have to pivot and, be there for your clients, and, just change sort of what we do in some markets.
Right. And that's what it's about. It's about adaptability and flexibility in this time of uncertainty right now. All right. Well, Ryan, any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with?
Well, I would just say that if anyone needs some data, you need some stats, you need some perspective, I have a blog, it's sacramentoappraisalblog.com, but otherwise, let's just try to, not eat everything in the house. That's the struggle's real right here. Oh my word. But really, I think throughout this time, I've been saying in almost every presentation I give, that's the most important thing right now. It's not real estate. It's about caring for people around us, and being there for people, and just listening and watching for the needs that neighbors have or that people in our community have. And I think that, we will get through this, in 10 years from now, we're going to look back, and then we'll remember, hopefully faintly what this was like. It feels so magnified right now, but we will get through this. And then I think that hopefully we can be refined through this, and come through this process, better people, and especially more caring people. So.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. We appreciate all of your time. And those of you that are not following Ryan's blog, please go follow it. It is action-packed with information. It's never a dull moment on those blogs. So please go check him out. We'll also include a link for those of you that are viewing this on YouTube underneath, so that you can click and go check out his page and what Ryan is all about. So thank you again, Ryan. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Let's do it again soon. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Take care.
Bye.
Okay, bye.